Welcome to this tutorial on how to take a prop from concept to completion in terms of building assets for video games. In this tutorial we'll be modeling this wall piece right here. We can see it right here. It is a part of a destroyed space station. So this wall will be comprised of really nice technological glisten and shine juxtaposed next to cracks, damage, and maybe some twisted metal if we can get it in there. In this chapter, we will be talking about how we can take this concept and how we can start building a base model for it. And hopefully, by the end of this chapter, we'll have a nice base where we can go from either making a high poly and then making a low poly from the model we create in this chapter. Before we get into just making some polygons, though, let's take a real good look at this piece of concept. Uh, it's nice to have a piece of concept in front of you, but until you really understand what the concept artist is trying to say and what he's trying to describe, you're not really going to get the most out of your model. So when I look at this piece of debris we're looking at right here, I noticed a few things. Well, the first thing I notice is I do not see the back of this wall. So I have to make a decision right here and then. Do I simply duplicate what's on this side to the other side? That would ease up the most UV space for our textures because we could just duplicate our faces onto the other side. Or do I want to add a little bit of more visual flair and kind of, I guess, go rogue or approximate what the other side may look like? More UVs, more textures, less resolution that way, but more visual flair. For this exercise, I think I'm just going to go with a basic texture repeated on both sides. This is in no way, shape, or form going to be a what we call hero prop or piece within the game. It's just there for eye candy. It's just there to uh, create a sense of space for our level. So the player really won't notice the prop too much. He'll notice it as part of a collection or part of a ensemble of debris out there. So that'll ease up our creation period, and it'll ease up on how many textures we need to create for this piece. So with that question out of the way, let's keep looking at it. Let's see where our damage areas are at, because this is destroyed space debris, so we gotta also let the viewer know that this was once part of a bigger whole. So the first bit of obvious damage I see is this stress crack chipped off piece right here. And we'll accomplish that with a mixture of silhouette and normal maps. The next bit of damage I see is a little bit of damage right here on the front facing side right here. And then obviously the bottom left corner, it looks a little jagged and bent, like it was ripped or torn. So I'm going to think that this side right here is nothing but exposed metal wires and burning, I guess, burning melted wall. Alright, great. So, with that in order, we now know what we kind of have to achieve with this piece. So let's just start simple, okay? It's easy to get overwhelmed with a project like this, so let's just start really simple. Let's just make the most basic forms of this piece. And that's really all we're going to do in Maya. We're just going to make some basic forms, okay? We're going to let our normal mapping in Photoshop do most of the talking for us. But that doesn't mean we can really forsake a high poly model, because we want to have really nice beveled edges in our normal map. So it's always nice and practical to bake from a nice high poly mesh inside of Maya. So with all that talking over with, I'm just going to get started. It looks like I need to start out with just a square. My concept artist has provided a 15 meter by 15 meter approximation of height. So that really just tells me this needs to be a square, and I can worry about the scale a little bit later. So let's get in and let's just make a nice cube. Alright, so I'm going to go to create, polygon, cube, and I'm first just going to draw it in the front view. See if I can get a nice square out of this. If I was smart, I would have clicked create normal square, but I'm going to just draw it out because I'm already on that road. And let's make it about that thick. That'll be enough to give it some substantial weight inside of space. Alright, great. So I got my basic shape drawn out. Let's go to my channel box and just zero this guy out. So I'll zero that out and make my scale, leave my scale as it is, and we can get that zeroed out by just going and freezing our transformations. Okay, cool. Alright, so we have my basic square. Where do we go from here? Well, let's take a look at our concept art. So let's pick out our major forms in the piece right here. We have a nice tapered top right here that tapers out almost like to a buttress on a column, if you will. We also have a nice piece of geometry that juts out like a panel that comes out of the wall right here. Alright, maybe for utility or repair purposes. We also have some pretty interesting negative spaces right here, okay? This is actually going to be a completely negative space. We're going to be able to see through this. Probably not be able to fly through it because I think our ship will be a little bit too big to fly through it. Scale is very important in terms of how you want your objects to function in their environment. So for instance, this is for a spaceship game, so I got to make the determination of whether or not the spaceship can fly through this hole. And 15 meters by 15 meters, that's pushing it. But I am going to stay true to the concept, and if the level designer wants to scale this up big enough to fly through, I'm going to allow him to do that. And we have this negative space right here. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that it's going to be part of a normal map texture. I'm not going to worry about making this completely see-through here. So I will just model that into our model. So I have a nice face extrude right here. I have a nice buttress top. I also have to worry about this jagged piece of metal right here. I'm going to have to model that in as well. So I think the best place to start is by making the top of my column. We're just simply going to do a simple face extrusion. I'm going to scale it out and just pull it up. I probably want to scale it just a little bit more like this. Alright, so I like the way this is scaled out, but do the sides jut out like that? It seems like they don't. So I'm going to make sure that these verts are kind of lined up in line so I don't have this crazy overhang. I might give it just a little bit of one. Add a little bit of... Well, this side is going to be the damaged side, so all bets are off on what the final geometry may look like over there. Alright, next let's get in and start laying down some edge loops so we can start extruding out some forms on my piece here. Alright, so I know I'm going to need an edge loop coming down here. I'm going to need one to come out right here. That way I'll have a nice face to extrude out right there. I'll need some edge loops for the door, for the window rather, and some edge loops to really start bringing in and pulling out this detail right here. So let's just go and get some edge loops started. Alright, so I'm going to pretend that that right there is going to be, this is the face that's going to be extruded out like so. Maybe bring this up just a little bit because my window's a little bit lower. And I'm just going to put another edge loop for the bottom of my window right here. I'm going to put an edge loop for the top of my window right here. And it looks like I need to put the window somewhere centralized right here. So these two faces will be my window. These two faces will be my buttressed column. Alright. And let's just go ahead and start getting a feel for this shape. So I'm going to delete this face and that face, this face and that face. There's my negative space for my window. And we got to be careful here right now because if I extrude out this face right here, then I'm going to have this face coming out and it's not going to be connected to my buttressed top. So let's see what we can do. I think I also want to give a space between this utility panel and this window. So in fact, let's go in and tweak the width of my window. So I'm just going to grab this whole edge loop right here, bring it in like so, and then that's going to allow me to insert another edge loop right here so we can really bring out that utility panel. Alright, in fact I want to scoot it over just a little bit more. Alright, so I go back into object mode, reset my calculation or my selections. So let's just pull this out. Alright, I instantly have something I don't really like. I don't want my buttress to have this little gap right here. So I'm just going to see if I can pull these verts up like so. And I think I can get away with something like that. Okay? And I can get away with it even more if I pull these back like so. And maybe slide these verts over here, because I'm going to need something to merge these verts into. Alright. It's getting there. So I'm just going to snap that vert there. Snap that vert there. So now I got to get rid of some hidden faces now. So I'll go inside the model, delete this one, and delete that one. Now I have a nice hollow model again. And I can just go in here and merge these verts together. Alright, great. You know what? I'm not too happy about the way that looks, actually. So let me go in now and keep messing around with it. I think I'm just going to go ahead and insert an edge loop right there. Maybe I can pull these in like so. Let's look at our concept art and see what this is doing. Alright, great. It looks like it's just going up insofar as... Let's undo these steps. I'm not quite happy with how that turned out. Alright, so we got to this point. Maybe I pulled out my face a little too much, because I do want this face to keep going up into this, but I don't want it to reach the total top. So I want it to terminate somewhere right there. Okay? And I will go ahead and pull these back in. It's all part of the process. Sometimes you just gotta try a few different things to get your model looking the way you want it. So I'm going to insert an edge loop right here. Hopefully Maya won't lag on me too much. Alright, so this will be my new edge that I will snap these verts together with. So snap and snap, merge. I still have those hidden faces in there, so I gotta get rid of them now. So I'll delete this one. And it looks like I need to go back in. Maya's having a little bit of trouble with my selections. Alright, so anytime you can't get rid of a selection like I did, just select a bunch of places and then click off of it, and it'll usually work out for you. So I still have this hidden face right here. I'm going to go inside and just get rid of it. No more hidden face. And now I have a nice piece of, I have the nice utility panel coming up, connecting to the top. Alright, great. Alright, let's go ahead and append off my window right here. Actually, before we do that, let's just go ahead and make our bisecting point in our model. And we'll just work on one side of this model like I said we were. Alright, so now we just have one side of our model. And I'm going to take these edges around my window right here, and I'm just going to extrude them. Just snap them to the middle of the grid. Alright, that'll set me up for whenever I mirror duplicate, these two walls will now be connected. Alright, everything's looking good so far. Let's model in this negative space for our, I guess, these recesses underneath our window right here. And there's going to be a trick to doing this to make the normal maps really read, and I'll show you what that is after I get my edge loops inserted just right. So not quite as wide as the window, they exist nonetheless. So let's give one right there. Alright. And it looks like this one goes back all the way down on the model. Alright. So this is the face that I want to recess into my model. The thing we gotta remember about normal maps is that it projects rays to capture the depth or change of surface on our models. So when I extrude this, our first inclination is just to bring it straight back, and we're done. We got our recess. Looking at it from this angle, looks good to me. But let's keep in mind how the rendering process works. This is a front view of our model. Notice how we can't see our recess anymore. It's just a blank wall. So that's why sometimes whenever you're making these large mass normal map details that's going to be baked into a map, sometimes you have to use a forced perspective on it. So to achieve that, we're just going to scale it like so. So there's our recess, and now when we look at it head on, we can actually see a recess in our model there. Cool. So forced perspective is pretty important. Otherwise, the normal map would not be able to see this recess go into the wall right like so. Alright, let's do the same for this guy. And just bring him in. Do the same depth as that guy. So I'm going to snap him to these verts up there. And it looks like in our model that this piece right here goes all the way down to the bottom. So this is a judgment call we got to make. Do we want to stay true to the concept art and force the model to have maybe more polygons to facilitate this kind of silhouette, or do we want to kind of fake it and make it optimized for our wall here? I think what I'll do is I'll kind of just finagle it. We'll delete some faces and we'll reconstruct the bottom of this wall here. Okay, so to do that, we'll just now I snap down these faces here. I'm going to grab these edges and I'm just going to extrude them out and snap them to the middle of the grid. Right now, I can either snap these 4 points individually to get them lined up, zeroed out, or I can use this little neat tool. I can double click my move settings, my move tool, move down to move snap settings, uncheck retain component spacing. Now when I hold X to snap it to grid, they all line up together. And now I have my foot recess for my wall. Why didn't I use that forced perspective on this extrusion? Well, I think I'm actually going to leave this into the geometry. I'm going to actually model out this panel coming out. There's no reason why I can't. It will only add a few extra polygons, and it'll help this wall seem more than just a flat piece of, you know, a box whenever you look at it from the side. That silhouette will read really nicely there. Alright, so the last thing we gotta do for the base of my model now is to recreate this jagged, torn piece of metal right there. It's a nice little detail. And it looks like I already have the vertices and edge loops I need. Remember, this is going to be a low poly game model, so we don't want to have too much detail. We don't want to go too crazy with it. So it's really just a matter of preference at this point. You don't have to go completely with the original. But add in a nice little bend and creak right there. Never hurt anybody. Alright. There we go. That'll do it just fine. Let's make the most out of these verts we can. Add a really sharp piece of jagged of metal. Alright, great. So, it looks like we have our wall coming together quite nicely. Let's just go to our normals now and do a set normal angle at 30 so we don't have any weird shading errors, and we have a nice place to start with our wall. For all intents and purposes, This is going to be as much detail as we're going to add to our piece here. Let me go back to that concept art. There's a lot of concept art here. If we look at our concept art again, compared to what we've done, let me just bring it up. Let me turn off this grid. Alright, so I think we could actually go a little bit more truer to the concept art with this jagged piece, because you see it goes in, then down, then in again. So it goes in, then down, then in again. That looks like it's a little bit more on track with what we have in the concept art. Do I have to follow the concept art completely like that? Don't have to. Just get the basic idea down. And in fact, I want to maybe bring up these verts right here. Being really nitpicky now, but that's good. That's what makes your models good, if you can really obsess over them. So when I go into object mode now and compare, I have my utility panel coming out right here. I have my negative space for my window. I have my buttressed top right here. I have my recesses at the bottom of the window here. And I have my damaged piece of the wall right there. So this is a good place to stop for this chapter. From this piece, we will go in and start supplying support edge loops to get it high poly. And we'll also extrapolate a low poly version out of this geometry. Alright, so tune in next chapter and we'll get started on those two tasks. Thanks.